Hello, everyone. Hopefully this is all working. I think Facebook is taking a bit of time. Here we go. Hi, everyone. So I think I should be live now on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. And thank you for joining. Of course, always a pleasure to come and join you to talk about languages. Thank you for joining me. Nice to see you. It's really good to see you all. So thank you for joining. I have for the Vedantor. So very nice to see you all. I have a number of questions that I got. So I'm going to start off the live as normal with the questions that I received before the live. And this will obviously get us started. And then I'll start looking at your questions as well in the comments. If I miss any for any reason, please feel free to copy them again and I'll do my best to get them. And yes, so here we go. So these are the questions I had before we started. I had a couple of questions related to scripts and how to learn them. So 3 questions related to scripts. The first one was, does learning a language with a different script slow you down in the learning process? My personal experience is that yes, it does. And the reason is, I think, that when you learn a language with a new script, it's more difficult to visualize it than your own native script or a script that you're very familiar with. And so when it comes to memorizing words and when it comes to imagining the languages, I think that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And I've noticed that, you can learn the script, it's not a problem. So a script like, for example, the Arabic script, it's actually not as crazy to learn as people think. And someone asked me about tips for that. There are actual tips like the script hacking series that Teach Yourself has, and my good friend Judith Meyer has written those and put them together. So I do encourage you, if you're interested in learning scripts, to have a look at those courses. And obviously there are a number of ways you can learn the scripts. That's just one course that I'm aware of. For me with Arabic, I didn't learn with a course per se. I actually I learned with a teacher. I had lessons in Arabic and he taught me the script as I went. Lep pozdrav iz Slovenia. Pozdrav. And I think, yes, it can slow you down learning with another script. It doesn't have to. Eventually it becomes normal. For me, my native script is Latin letters. But I've been living in an area of the world where we use the Cyrillic script a lot. And so for me, the Cyrillic script has become a secondary, almost native type script for me. So I can visualize it very easily. And but I still find that, scripts do it just, I think, just by virtue of the fact that you're transposing it onto another thing. For some people, maybe it's easy and they didn't have problems. For me personally, I have felt it slowed me down. Even though people do say, oh, it's so much easier for some languages to learn the script, still, just to visualize the words, I find it a little bit trickier. There are ways around it, so you can always, if you're trying to learn vocabulary, focusing on how it's written. And I think it's always an advantage to learn the script. I mean, this is definitely not a reason to not learn the script. I would never advocate that. I think we should always do that. So the next thing that I was asked was what kind of research I would like to see linguists do. So I don't have a preference as to what I want linguists to do. Not being a linguist myself, I kind of let linguists decide themselves. I think they're far more capable than I am for deciding their research. I find, obviously, what they do in the field of multilingualism, in the field of language acquisition, generally, second language acquisition, first language acquisition, I find also interesting as a field of research. I do find that interesting. So I've had a number of people come who are linguists or neuroscience background, and they analyze the brain. They look at how the brain reacts to certain things, and I find that particularly really interesting. And that's one of the reasons why I was very happy to take part in a study just now where I'm learning Scots, and I was assessed before the trial, and then I'll be assessed again at the end of the course, and that will be at the end of next week. So I'm very, very happy to take part in things like that, and I enjoy seeing and hearing about the results. So yeah, I do like that kind of thing. I don't know if I have a specific thing that I would say to do, but I definitely am interested more in that field than other fields, I guess. And then maybe, yeah, I like to hear about lots and lots of things because it's sort of, I think when I don't know something, I enjoy hearing about it from people who do know. So, and linguistics is definitely one of those areas that I find actually quite fascinating. Professor Gillard Zuckerman, who actually does work with reconstructing and teaching back indigenous languages to the peoples of Australia. I find that particularly interesting. The work he does. He came and spoke about it at the Polyglot conference in Thessaloniki, which I thought was really interesting. He spoke about it at the language event in Melbourne too. We were very lucky to have him come and talk. And then we've got people like Thomas Back, who talks about the neuro part of the neurolinguistics and all that kind of cool stuff as well. And if you do have a chance to look at the Polyglot conference playlist, if you look at the Reykjavik playlist, you'll find Thomas Back has a presentation there. He also has a presentation at the Edinburgh language event on that playlist too, where he speaks about that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, do check it out. It's really cool. And then I had advice for studying Japanese. Well, I studied Japanese at university in Sweden for a semester. I enjoyed it. I wanted to understand how the alphabets worked and how they fitted in together, and so I thought it was quite fun to do a university course. And then obviously we had the Polyglot conference in Japan last year, which was really good. It meant that I got to go over and use some Japanese, even though my Japanese level is great. It's just to sort of be a tourist is perfectly fine. And to learn Japanese, so I did a course at Darwin University, and I found that quite good. One of the courses the course that we used at that was a Genki course, which is they have different levels of Genki, and so that was it was actually quite a good course to use. I enjoyed it, and yeah, so that's the only one I can really recommend that I've really used. In order to just speak basic Japanese, if you're getting into the beginning of it, I actually did the Mitchell Thomas method for Japanese years and years and years ago, and it's strange because that really stuck with me over the whole period of sort of my language study, and I found that the Mitchell Thomas method really did make it stick. I'm not going to say that it gave me a huge vocabulary, because obviously the idea is it gives you structures and confidence to move forward, and I found that it did that. So it did the job that it said it was going to do. How do you focus on goals with no motivation? If you've got no motivation and you have goals, then maybe you need to look at your goals and see whether or not they're the right goals for you. Because if you're not motivated by the goals you've set, then it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse. Because if your motivation is gone, it's probably because the goals that you set for yourself are not realistic, the goals, or potentially they're just not goals that are going to motivate you to move forward. So I say, check your goals, make sure you've got the right ones, and then move forward doing it that way. How many languages do I know now? Okay, and how long did it take for me to forget the languages I've forgotten? Oh, wow, that's an interesting question, actually, because languages I know now, really tough. It depends. I tend to let people decide what they think I know and don't know. Everyone will disagree, and different people will agree. In the end, it doesn't really make any difference, to be honest. I've studied a lot of languages. I enjoy them very, very much, and that's the main thing for me. How many I actually speak is less relevant to me in my life. But in fact, of what's forgotten, I find an interesting element to add, and how long it took me. So I studied Finnish as a project about 4 years ago, and I didn't know how much I'd forgotten. People have written to me every now and again in bits of Finnish on here, and I recognized some of it, and I didn't realize, but I'd forgotten an awful lot of Finnish. And I'd forgotten how much I'd forgotten until I started going through the books that I use, Suomen Meistari, and I looked through the dialogues, and I realized how much I'd forgotten, which is crazy. So yeah, and that was probably like 4 years without really studying Finnish, and yeah, my Finnish had completely gone, I'd say. It wasn't completely gone zero, but from where it was, whereas I'd done the A2 level in Finnish, and I was able to actually have a converse with people in Finland when I was there. I'm not saying I had amazing conversations, but I could converse with people on daily topics and talk about things, and I was getting around the city not using English. But I definitely wouldn't have been able to do that again, and probably still couldn't. So yeah, it took me about, I imagine, 3 or 4 years to get to the level of where you've forgotten it. Isn't that amazing? How long did it take you to forget a language? Yeah, I'd never really thought about it before, but I think some languages are easier to forget than others. If you learn a language that's not related to other languages you speak, you forget them more easily. So like Finnish, for example, for me. Learning a few languages at the same time, any advice? Yeah, try and learn languages at the same time, see how you get on. If you find it too confusing and too complicated, then leave one till later. You've got to take into consideration every time that you learn more than one language at a time that you are going to slow down your progress. It's absolutely normal. And I got a question asking, why is it good to learn several languages? Does it help with personal development? Actually, I think that it does. I think it's really useful to learn several languages for the reason that when you get into more than one language, you start seeing links between languages and cultures, and I just think you start seeing things with different eyes. So I've really enjoyed studying Persian recently because I've seen the words that I've learned from Arabic and Turkish and in the Balkan languages, and where some of them have come from Persian, and how some of them have got things in common with Persian. And also in Indonesian, there are words that are from Arabic, and it's amazing how these things all sort of come together, and I really like it. It's kind of like, I suppose, like listening to a symphony, sort of, lots and lots of different instruments in a concert, at a concert, and you focus on one set of instruments in the beginning, maybe the wind instruments, and then you start hearing the strings, and then you start hearing the percussion, and I kind of like that, that it all comes together, and you feel that coming together when you learn more than 1 or 2 languages. I got a question, how old am I? I'm 43. That's an easy one to answer. And how do you improve pronunciation? So there are many things you can do. You can record yourself, you can ask for tips and feedback on the way you speak, and you can ask where the position of the mouth is when people pronounce certain words and letters, and then where the vibrations are and those kinds of things. That's probably the best way. Any ideas on content and websites for linguistics? None that I can recommend per se. I would say that it would depend on what sort of linguistics you're talking about. Linguistics is a big field, and there are lots of topics under linguistics. And if anybody has got a certain site that they use that they particularly like to get into linguistics, feel free to comment and let us know. Hacks to learn Arabic script, I think I've given that one. Okay. How do I recommend passing language learning? I'm not sure what that was, sorry. Italki, how do you pick a teacher? I watch the videos, see who resonates with me. Sometimes it is price related, to be honest with you. I can't necessarily be paying a lot of money for lessons, and sometimes I just want speaking lessons. So I don't often go for like very structured lessons. I go for people who will just speak to me in the language for the half-hour or hour lesson that I want to have, and I tend to decide what I want to talk about in the beginning, and then we go from there and see how we get on. But it's a very personal thing, I think, how you find a teacher. But I tend to do that. We do actually have a nice Italki video that was filmed in Fukuoka. One of the Italki teachers, Japanese teacher, came and gave a talk about what it's like teaching on Italki. Might be good to look at that and see what she thinks. But then I would say listening to people, listening to the sort of the videos and seeing who resonates with you, because if you feel a connection just through the video, is this a person I want to talk to, or feel that I would have a connection with? Tips for learning languages with no written form, like Arabic dialects. Well, I'm a great believer in it's good to be able to write things down. I think that it's good to use all of our abilities as adult learners, for example, or as learners that have been through the language learning process already once, at least learning a language. I think it's really important to be able to use all of those faculties, and so making notes is really important. And whether you could use the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. So I would definitely advise anyone out there to be familiar with or learn the IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet, and you can just you can actually learn that quite easily by going. There's actually a website online that you can pick it up. And I'd say you would probably need to use that to help you to write down the sounds of the language as you hear them. And I'd say that would probably be the best way to do it. If you've got no way of writing down the sounds at all, unless you make up your own way of writing it, see how you get on. But that would be my advice. And I have got to the end of those questions, which was, I thought there were lots of them, and I did quite well getting through them all in just 15 minutes. Go me. Okay. So good to see you all. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you found those questions useful. Is it difficult to find opportunities to speak Icelandic in Iceland as a tourist? Iceland's probably not very sociable. Icelanders are nice people. I like Icelanders. You can, of course, you can speak Icelandic. It's a language where obviously in Iceland people do speak pretty good English. So sometimes, yeah, they think they're helping you by speaking English. All you can say is just say something nice, like, you like the language and you want to practice. And I'm sure they'll be very flattered and be happy to speak to you and let you practice. So yeah, of course you can. And Icelanders are pretty sociable. They're pretty nice. They tend to socialize in a different way to other cultures. So this is when you get into the culture. So instead of the sort of the pub thing, they have the pub thing as well, and going to pubs and places to meet people, but also they use their outdoor swimming pools as places where they go and chat and find out all the latest gossip. That's kind of what Icelandic culture's about. They all go out together and they go and they sit in a hot pot, as they call it, or a hot tub, and they chat out the things that are going on. But yeah, you can use it, definitely. I've always had very positive experiences of Iceland. Thank you, Ebru. Thank you. Welcome back. Thank you. Miro Mol. Muchas gracias. Sí. Gracias. What's a good way to use Italki if you want to improve certain language from B? Okay, if you want to learn to the higher levels, like B2 to C1 or C1 to C2, you need to know what you want to do, what your goal is. I'd say that for your teacher, that these levels of sort of, once you get to a kind of a B2 level and you're moving beyond, even from a B1 level, you're talking about vocabulary that's not very easy to quantify, and it's phrases, it's expressions, it's types of genre, types of levels of language. So it's not easy to quantify. Maybe watching some news things, reading about news, reading about things that interest you, and talking about them with your teacher, setting goals to talk about certain topics, Tim, would be the best way. Has learning modern Hebrew without vowels been a problem in pronunciation? Did it get confusing? Hebrew, Arabic, Persian, yeah, sometimes I make mistakes with those things. Not having the vowels there as a learner can be a little bit tricky, but you get feedback, so it's not too bad. And you can write the vowel sounds. So there is a way of writing them as a learner. You don't have to learn them without the vowels. You can learn them with the vowels written on. Yeah. Hi, Michelle. How's it going? Greetings from Mexico. Hello, Carlos. Nice to see you. Okay, let me just go over and see if we have any questions here. Hola, Ricardo. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Todo bien? Let me see. Do I have any other questions here on? Okay. Which is better, learn a new language from one or two sources? Okay, mainly from different sources. So I tend to learn, I start with a source, and then I tend to look at other options as well, just to sort of consolidate my learning. I tend to use a few different things to learn languages. So not just one, I tend to use a few. But I start off with one because you start off with many, many different sources. You end up just going all over the place with your studies, and it's hard to kind of keep track. You need to be able to feel that you're moving forward, right, as well. So, yeah. A ver, acerca de el monstruo de la lengua. No, no lo conozco. Adán, ¿cómo se llama? Giuseppe Casparo, no, no lo conozco. No lo conozco. El monstruo de la lengua. Qué fuerte. I think we learn languages the natural way, not the school way. Okay, yeah. Even if we forget some, we remember once we get back to it. Yeah, Ibrahim, we do. I think we do get to a point where we just end up remembering the languages. I think that's completely possible. It takes time to get back to them, always, and it's going to be that way for me with Finnish, I'm sure. Let's see. Cześć Wojtek, jak się masz w Toronto? Saludos, me inspiran a aprender idiomas. Muchas gracias, le agradezco mucho. A ver, let me see, a ver lo que tenemos aquí ahora. Vamos a continuar ahora con Instagram. Tengo que ver la pregunta porque tengo muchas preguntas. Vaya, aquí bien. A ver. Hola a todos, salam, salam. Nice to see you all. So, let me see. Okay. The person's name who was looking into the Aboriginal Australian languages is Gilad Zuckerman. And Gilad Zuckerman, he is a professor at the University of Adelaide. And you go on to the Polyglot Conference YouTube channel and you look at the videos from Thessaloniki in 2014, then you will, no, 2016, sorry, 2016, you will see Gilad's presentation on these. So, and you'll be able to find out more information about him. He's been in quite a few things and does quite a lot of talks. He's very active on social media, so you can follow him on Twitter as well. And I think Facebook too. I don't know if he's on Instagram. Let me just see. Hello, okay. It's very nice to see you all. Thank you for writing nice messages to say hello. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Good to see you. What was the first to master a language? The shortest way to master a language and the longest period to master. And okay. And what languages were they? For me to master a language. Okay, so I'm just gonna sort of preface it and say, for mastering a language, at the point where I feel very, very comfortable in the language, actually, I don't know. The ones that I speak well at home, for example, we have 5 languages that we use at home, and all of those I feel very, very comfortable in. I don't know. They kind of all went quite quickly. I'd say probably The one that took the longest maybe was Spanish, just because I started Spanish at school, and then I learned it at university. But I really got into it when I was living in France. I really got into it. And French probably took a long time, but I don't remember because I was a child. I just learned it. And German was quite quick because I lived in Germany, and I studied it really intensively and then kept using it constantly since then. Same with Macedonian. I learned it very intensively and then continued using it, and it's been my home language now for 15 years. So it's been a long time, you know. It's quite tricky. It took there aren't many languages that I've studied over a very, very long time in that way. I tend to find that if I study them over a very long time to get to the point where I feel very, very comfortable, it tends to be it's more that I'm in a situation where I use it a lot, if you get what I mean. I don't know in terms of time is difficult. It's so hard. It is difficult to sort of put an exact thing on a quote. It feels like I'm avoiding that question, but it's really difficult to answer. Okay, let me see. What do I think of Italki? I like it. Pros and cons. Well, the pros are obviously you can practice any load of languages that you can't normally practice where you live, and find teachers that you can't normally find where you live. That's particularly true for me. So I have, at the moment, I'm using Italki. I have a teacher for Indonesian. I have a teacher for Greek. I have a teacher for Albanian. I have a teacher for Persian, and that's it for now. And I really like all of them, and they're all languages. I mean, Albanian, I could potentially find a teacher here, but with coronavirus, it'd be difficult. And to be honest, it's not easy to get good lessons here, because people either speak Albanian or they don't. So it's a first language for many people, so it's a bit trickier. But yeah, cons, I don't know. I don't know what the disadvantages would be, to be honest. I can't think of a disadvantage because italki is an online platform for learning languages and for having a teacher. So it does exactly what it says. It's not in person, but that's obviously natural that it's not going to be in person, because it's an online platform. So the only disadvantage of maybe is that you don't have that in-person thing. That's the only thing I can think of. If your teacher uses, shared docs, things like that, that's really cool. Yeah. Μιλάς ελληνικά, ναι, και βέβαια. Μένω στο Βαλκάνι, για εμένα είναι φυσικό να μιλήσω και ελληνικά εδώ, στην Ελλάδα. Στη Βόρεια Μακεδονία όχι, αλλά στην Ελλάδα ναι, μιλάω ελληνικά. Let me see. Would you? Okay, let me see. No, you waved at. I'm getting. I wave at people on Instagram. I'm very good at waving on Instagram. It's kind of my thing. There we go. Wave again. So I'm not seeing any more questions on Instagram for now. So I'm going to go back to the other platforms and just check to make sure I'm not missing any more questions. Oh, okay, I do have one more. What two languages have you frequently mixed up? Oh, good question. So it used to be Catalan and Romanian. It used to be that years ago. I used to always mix them up. I would say that the most recent big mix-up for me was when I was learning Slovak, Czech, and Polish. I found that quite challenging, and sometimes it's very weird. But languages that sound similar get a bit confusing. So in my brain, the word dedo always was the word for a finger in Spanish, dedo, and now its first meaning in my head is actually grandfather, because that's the Macedonian word for grandfather, dedo. So it's weird whenever I say the word in Spanish now. I know the word for finger, of course, but when I say it, I do think of the word, the Macedonian word, because it's the same word, and it's pronounced in a very similar way. So yeah, that's a bit weird. But it's only a word; it's not a thing. And Norwegian and Swedish, I'd say, yeah, I mix. Norwegian and Swedish get mixed up quite a lot as well. Was war für dich das Schwierigste, als du Norwegisch und Spanisch gelernt hast? Also Norwegisch für mich war eigentlich, dass ich auch Schwedisch spreche, und das war ein Problem eigentlich. Ich hatte eigentlich das heißt nur aus Schwedisch ausgesprochen, und das war ja ein Problem. aber es ging noch. Ich meine, die konnten mich schon verstehen, und ich habe die Sprache eigentlich okay benutzt, sozusagen. Aber das war schwierig. Ja, so Sprachen, die eigentlich so ähnlich sind, so wie Schwedisch und Norwegisch, das war sehr schwierig. Beim Spanisch lernen, es ist schwierig zu sagen, weil ich ja Spanisch in der Schule gelernt habe, und also damals war es so, ja, also einfach mit den Verben, würde ich sagen, ja schon, weil die Verben eigentlich ein bisschen unterschiedlich funktionieren, wie zum Beispiel auf Französisch. Das war ein bisschen komplizierter. Okay, let me see. What tips would you give to maintain a language? Use it. I mean, like, thinking about it, reading about it, listening to things in it, finding language partners. I think that's the most important thing if you want to continue maintaining a language. You have to use it, and you have to make the opportunities to use language. You have to make opportunities in life generally for many, many things, particularly for languages, and to speak them. You have to make those opportunities. It's not a given, unfortunately. Sometimes it's easier than others, but other times it's pretty difficult. Okay. I'm going to see if I've got some more questions here on. Okay, I have some more. Have I learned Arabic? I studied it a little bit, actually 3 times in my life, and I really like it, Michelle. I just don't speak it very well. Is it a bad idea to learn Czech and Bulgarian at the same time? After all, both languages are Slavic and similar. Tim, Czech and Bulgarian are as far apart as you can get in the Slavic group, so not as bad as learning, say, Czech and Polish or Czech and Slovak, but still, it could get a bit confusing. Some words are a bit weird, like so the word for an idea in Czech is nápad, and the word for that same word actually means an attack in the South Slavic languages. So there are a few funny words like that, like, if you say I've got an idea, it means, and you say it and you use the same word nápad by mistake, it means you're saying I've got an attack. I've got a way of fighting people. There are funny things like that you can learn that maybe get a bit confusing, but otherwise you could try it and see. I never tried learning. Well, in the beginning, I mean, it was enough to just learn Czech, to be honest with you. HelloTalk is great for language. Okay, cool, Ebro. I'm glad that you like HelloTalk for that. I've never used them for it. What's the best way to learn Russian cases? In situ, so you learn phrases, you learn things that you need to say, and you learn the cases with them, is the best way to learn cases, and then you learn patterns over time. I think if you go on trying to learn just the case endings, it can work for some people. It can help people. It can make people feel reassured, and you can do both and try both. But I would always advise to learn how to say things correctly in the case as you need the information, or need to say the information. Luis, you're considering learning Swedish and Dutch at the same time. Do you think this might be a bad idea? Possibly. Possibly. They sound very different, so it's not a problem with sound. Sometimes though, the words might get a bit confusing because they are related, and that can be a bit tricky when languages are of the same family. But try it and see, Luis. I mean, if you find one is sort of influencing the other too much, then I'd say stick to one. Okay, let me see. Do you speak some Asian language, for example, Japanese? I've studied some Japanese, but I don't really speak. I would never say I speak Japanese. I've studied some Japanese, but I don't really speak it. No. I speak. Again, I've studied Thai as a child. I've not really used it very much. My Thai is not very good. I speak some Indonesian, and then I speak some Mandarin, and the other Asian languages. Depends what you mean by Asian, but I'm guessing you mean, if you said Japanese, you mean that kind of Far East Asian. So they would be the Far East Asian languages that I've studied. Manjuska dialekter, okej. Känner du någon av dem? Nej, Olga. Nej, jag känner icke. Nej. Sen Oslo-dialekt. Det är småsmål. Okay. Nej, det känner jag icke. No. Dedo we say in Czech as well means grandfather. Yes, you do indeed. I remember this is quite a good word. This dedo word is quite cute. Okay. Say my name, Alex. Okay. Right. Let me see. Alex, you're spamming a little bit there, aren't you? Let's see. It's spammer. There we go. Gids, how would you tackle a dead language? I guess I would just read, because it's, I mean, a language like, it depends on the language. So a language like Latin, for example, you can actually learn to speak it. And there are groups that want to speak it. And there are groups from many dead languages where people like to speak. There are people that enjoy learning to speak them. So I prefer speaking myself. I'm not a huge fan of learning languages just to read. I like to speak them. Some languages that are similar to languages I speak, then I may learn them to understand them better and to read them better. But generally, I learn to speak languages. Nihongo. Okay. 私の日本語ちょっと unfortunately, yes, it's not スウェーデンの大学に日本語を勉強しました。でも今は日本語いい話しません。There we go. Do you understand Azeri? Yeah, I do. Turkmen, I've not tried. Kazakh, a little bit, not very much. Uzbek, not tried. But I do understand Azeri fairly well. I can read it pretty well because of Turkish. It's fairly similar to Turkish, so I can understand quite a lot from that. Do I think that Macedonian is similar to Czech or Slovak? Yes, in that it's a Slavic language, so there are many things that are similar, but a Czech person can't necessarily, or a Slovak speaker would not necessarily understand Macedonian, and vice versa. So people here don't understand Czech and Slovak if they speak. It's just a bit too different. They might get words, of course, because there are over 1,800 words that are the same in all Slavic languages. Words like, words like mleko, words like voda, these are all words that are very similar in the Slavic languages. Base words. There are some very strange words that are base words in all Slavic languages, which I love. One word is son, which is the word for catfish, which I think is hilarious. So catfish is pretty much always the same in almost every Slavic language. And the other word that's very similar is sokol, which is, I'm going to get the word in English wrong now. Is sokol a falcon? I think it is in English. It's one of those birds of prey. But yeah, it's quite interesting that you've got these words that are really random, that the same all the way through. these languages, which is, I think, really cool. Do I learn languages every day? Yeah, pretty much. I study pretty much every day. I do something every day anyway. I don't know whether you call it study, but I do something with languages every day. Do I learn them in bursts of a few months and stop? I can't really do that because I speak lots of languages for work and for my daily life. So my life is in multiple languages. Just, I mean, as part of my routine, it's not that I don't even need to try to study languages. It just happens because of my living situation and the way my life is organized. I made languages wrap around my life. So yeah, I mean, and that's really the key to learning them and learning lots of them. How do you manage to keep commitment to learning languages every day? Well, I do sometimes have times where I don't want to do much more actively, and so I don't feel guilty about having a day off or anything like that. But I tend to do something, whether it's listening to something, revising something. But I tend to do something. What's a good way to write in Cyrillic on a Latin keyboard? Learn the layout. Stick maybe notes on your keyboard to know where they are. Actually, writing in Macedonian on my Latin keyboard is really easy because they pretty much correspond with the sounds, and there are just a few letters that I just know where they are because I use them all the time. But yeah, depending on the Cyrillic script that you're talking about, because there are many. Bulgarian doesn't do that, Russian doesn't do that, and I find those harder to write on my keyboard. But on my phone, very, very easy because I have, I can just change the keyboard on my phone, which is really, really good, and I do. Okay, sorry, привет, я разговариваю по-русски тоже. Хорошо, Миша, это молодец. Sound advice, thank you, you're very welcome. Do you often hear Vlach, a Romanian in Skopje? No, we don't. There is often a Vlach or a Romanian stand at the book fair normally in April in Skopje, and I've bought lots of their books, their materials, and I've spoken to them, but you can't. It's very difficult to know who's Vlach as well in Skopje because Vlach speakers don't tend to have an accent in Macedonian, whereas Albanian speakers often do. You can hear if somebody's an Albanian speaker quite often, not always, but you can quite often. And whereas the Vlach really are very well assimilated into sort of just a Macedonian context, and you would not know. And even sometimes, even a lot of them have lost the language in the family. So even if they have a Vlach name, they may not speak Vlach. I think you'd need to go to Kruševo, which is the main city of the Vlach in the Republic of North Macedonia. And Vlach is an official language there. I've not been yet, I want to go, but I want to go. And if anybody knows, there was a famous singer called Toshe Proeski from here, and he was actually Vlach from that city. So yeah, I would love to go. And I've heard it before. I've spoken to a Vlach speaker, and I've spoken Romanian. They spoke to me in Vlach. She was actually from the Macedonia region of Greece, and a Macedonian, Vlach, and Greek speaker. And she had to come to live in this part of North Macedonia after the expulsion, and she came, and we were speaking, and she'd speak to me in Vlach, and I would speak to her in Romanian. Another question: have you studied Estonian? A little bit, Estonian, Olga. Not very much though. Not very much at all, unfortunately. I would love to learn more. Okay, nice to see you, Carlos. I don't speak any Nawat yet, but hopefully soon, ready for Cholula. Is it difficult to learn Romanian if you already speak Italian, Spanish, and some Slavic languages? I think you can pick it up reasonably quickly if you speak those other languages. It gets a bit confusing though. Indaxi, okay, let me see. So, hello from California, hello. Thank you very much for your kind words here. Very inspired, it's very sweet. These are nice. I do enjoy these talks with you all. They're a lot of fun. Let me just see if I've got any more questions here. In the full language culture, it helps. So yeah, it does definitely help to understand culture. It definitely helps to speak the language. Improving your vocabulary and retaining vocabulary, the best way to do it is exposure to the language. If you're constantly looking at the language and seeing the language, then I think that's the best way to improve your ability. Can you speak Farsi? A little bit. I'm learning now. I'm learning Farsi. It's taking time. I've had to have a couple of weeks where I've not been doing as much actively because I've been working on some stuff for the Polyglot conference, and that's taken my time, my free time, a lot more than normal because obviously I work full time as well. But I'm getting there. We'll get there. It takes time. Learning a language does not happen overnight. It takes time. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I kind of want to reiterate that to people that sometimes people do sort of see me and they hear my story. And if you hear my story now, where I am and what I've done, this is a journey of like 40 years. I mean, this is a long journey. This isn't something that I did in even a few years. I mean, it's been a build-up of studying bits of languages, going backwards and forwards, learning languages at university, studying on courses, studying at home, moving to different countries. This has been, years and years and years and years of my life, and it's really not something that happens overnight. I think a lot of us would like to imagine that's what happens, and I think sometimes you'll catch people in the process of learning a language intensively, and it feels like that's how it's going to work. It doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. Sometimes you do have languages that you can pick up quickly, but then they go as quickly as you pick them up. Do Norwegians from Oslo understand better Swedish than some Norwegian dialects spoken in Western Norway, Central Norway? I have no idea. You'd have to ask a Norwegian to if it's better. I mean, some of the speakers of some Norwegian dialects are fairly out there in terms of from standard bokmål, so it's quite different. And Swedish is fairly Swedish, like from I would say from Gothenburg. If someone from Gothenburg goes over to Oslo, there's no real issue with the language to understand each other, to have a conversation. But I don't know how comparing dialects in that way. I'm not sure. Have I studied Basque? Yes, I studied Basque and failed miserably. So I studied Basque for a while. The start of this year actually, and I did a few, maybe 2 or 3 months maybe of Basque, but I didn't really get very far with it. And then my teacher had to take a break. She was working on some stuff on her own, so she took a break, and I've not restarted yet. Maybe sometime in the future I will. Okay. Let me see. You're learning Basque and Nahuatl. Fantastic, Carlos. That's really cool. You won't explode. I'm sure. I'm sure you won't explode. Okay. Let me just see. Es necesario. A ver. Jolín, eso en. Es necesario vivir en un país para aprender el idioma. No, para nada. Se puede aprender un idioma también de cualquier país. Creo que es posible. Para mí, por ejemplo, aprendí a hablar macedonés en el Reino Unido, y luego trasladé con mi trabajo para trabajar aquí y empecé a hablar mejor, claro, porque estaba hablando cada día sin pensar, sin hacer un esfuerzo para poder practicar el idioma, ¿no? Como en Londres hay que buscar una persona, hay que hacer algo especial para poder utilizar, leer o hablar o lo que sea, hacer algo con el idioma. Pero aquí, por ejemplo, sí que yo salgo aquí en la calle y hablo macedonés sin problema. Eso sí que es verdad. Vivir en un país sí que se puede practicar, pero hay también mucha gente que vive al extranjero y nunca lo utilizan, ¿eh? Nunca, siempre están en sus grupos, en sus pandillas, hablando con la gente así en inglés o lo que sea, o en español, lo que sea, Y eso también pasa mucho. Y vivir en un país, no. Se puede aprender un idioma también viviendo en otro país. You're going to go study Icelandic at UCL. Oh, Benjamin, that sounds really cool. So for studying languages at university, UCL is a really cool university for Icelandic. I know some people who studied Icelandic at that university and then are now in Iceland and have just, you may turn into one of that group, Benjamin. So reach out to me. If you want advice, I know people who have been through that course. So feel free to reach out to me separately and I can put you in touch. Can you accept my request? I'm not doing a live to sort of do chats at the moment. It's just for me to answer questions because I get so many questions on these that I don't have time to do question and answer. But if anybody wants to talk to me, then I'm happy to possibly do some interviews or things like that we can talk together. 我中文什么样？不太好，但是我会说一点儿中文，没关系。Spreek een beetje Nederlands. Ja, een beetje Nederlands is goed. Ja, geweldig hoor. Ja, Dutch Daily, geweldig. Ja, hoe gaat het met? Gaat het goed hoor? Ja, hoe gaat het met jou? Waar kom je vandaan? Ik heb in Rotterdam gewoond. Ja, al lang geleden. Ja, al 16 jaar. Ongelooflijk hoor. Maar ik heb vandaag eigenlijk Nederlands gesproken, Afrikaans gepraat. Maar het is niet hetzelfde, maar een beetje zo gelijk. Even kijken. Any language attempts? Oh, language failures. Many language failures. Georgian, terrible Georgian. I failed at Georgian. Japanese is terrible. I speak a number of languages very badly as well. So some of the languages I study I speak very badly. Hi from Turkey, hello. Nasılsın? İyiyim, teşekkür ederim. What's harder? What's that? Basque or French or Hungarian? Depends where you're from. If you're from or Finnish, or sorry, Basque, Finnish or Hungarian. If you're from Estonia, Finnish is going to be pretty easy. If you're from the UK, all three of those are pretty steep learning curves. But yeah, I don't know how easy and hard. It's always it's so relative. It's so personal what easy and hard means. So it's always difficult to answer that question. I'd say that all of them are fairly, Hungarian, Finnish, and Basque. They take time to learn really. Hello from Guatemala. Hello, nice to see you. Hi. Let me see. You didn't know that I was a lover of Greek? Yeah, of course. Yeah, I like Greek a lot. So it's a language that we use fairly often. I go to, we go to Greece usually when there's not a pandemic. We only go to Greece fairly often. It's very close and I like it a lot. Can you say a few sentences from your new Scottish course? You cheeky one, Lisa. So my favorite sentence so far is "Fús is it's a way of saying how are you in Scots, and the answer to that is Pékin. So Pékin for Pékin. So it's Fús is how are you, and they can say alright. So it's actually the same as in Scouse. So in Scouse we say alright. And the answer to all right is all right. That's hello, but it means like all right. And in Scots they say the same thing. They say alright, alright, alright. I think they can say it that way as well. Yeah, it's pretty cool. cheeky one, Lisa. Do you speak any dialect? I do speak some dialects, not very well, but I do speak some dialects. Yes. It depends on whether or not people identify as dialects. Languages and dialects and all that is all very complicated. I tend to leave it to the groups to decide what they speak. But yeah, I like to learn different ones. Do I speak Arabic? Not very well. How good is your Finnish? It's terrible. My Finnish is terrible. I've studied it. I got to the A2-ish level in Finnish, and then I didn't use it for like 3 or 4 years. So it's terrible at the moment. Polish, yeah, I could speak Polish still, and I can understand it fairly well. Yeah, Polish. I've been to Poland a number of times, and it's a Slavic language, so it really helps to sort of speak a language that's similar to ones that you already speak on a daily basis, or use and hear it on a daily basis. So yeah. Right, let me just check to make sure there are no other questions I'm missing, because I often have so many questions that I don't get to them all. So it's my goal to at least get to all the questions. Okay, so what do I think? Why are Scottish Gaelic and Irish more endangered than Welsh? Tim, it's a good question. I don't know that I don't know if I can give a full answer to that here. Probably take me a lot longer, and there are other people that would be better at answering that than me. But I would say that possibly with Irish, for example, I think that there was a backlash over the political decision to impose Irish as a compulsory language. And I think that that's possibly one of the reasons. That's what I've been told by a number of Irish people anyway. And often when people have an idea, whether or not everyone agrees with that as one of the reasons, clearly there's a certain amount of people in the country that believe that is part of the problem. With Welsh, it can be learned as a second language or as a first language, and I think also with Welsh, particularly Welsh medium schools, were performing a lot better than English-speaking medium schools in Wales for a long time, and so it became better. It was seen as a better thing for your child to go to a school that would perform better. So English-speaking parents were very willing to send their children to Welsh-speaking schools, to Welsh medium schools. So you got a lot of new Welsh speakers that way, where they sent their children to what they saw as better schools, and were outperforming the English schools. I don't know if that happened in Wales. In Scotland, there are a lot fewer Gaelic speakers, so that's possibly part of the issue as well, that it's not as widespread as, say, Welsh. And I think Welsh has always been always had the higher number of speakers, so it's more widely spoken than the other two that you mentioned there. How different is Bulgarian spoken in West Bulgaria and East Bulgaria? Well, in West Bulgaria, actually, there are parts where they speak very similar dialects to the ones over the other side of the border in North Macedonia. And like any language, it's a continuum. So accents change, differ. How different are Turkish spoken in North Macedonia and Turkish spoken in Istanbul or Ankara? Pretty different. In sometimes there are kind of translations of the grammar into Turkish that doesn't work in Turkish, and sometimes some Slavic words are used. Okay. Which is my favorite sentence in Spanish? Israel, muchas gracias. I'd say that my favorite thing in Spanish is más vale una vez roja que 100 amarillo. And that means it's best to make a mistake once than to kind of hesitate and not know and not be corrected 100 times. So that's kind of how I interpret that one in terms of the language speaking well. So I hope that was good. Somebody's written I like it. So that was kind of it for today. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappear because I've only got 1 more minute remaining on my Instagram, and that's my hour done. And I've really enjoyed speaking to you all again. I look forward to seeing you all again next week, and we'll all talk about our favorite subject of languages. So join me next week. Until then, take care, happy language learning, and see you soon. Bye, everyone.